So what are we doing here today? You don't want to talk about my art, and God, that's hard for me.
Well, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. If you're, so what happened was when we did the checking in, when I did the checking in with you, I had a lot of questions about, there's a lot going on up here with you, which is expressing itself on the canvas. And I kind of had a lot of questions about that, like
Okay.
where things came from. So I think what I want, does that make sense?
Yes, do go for it.
Are you okay if I just ask you questions about your history and how you got into art and things of
You
that
know
nature?
what? You're the boss.
Okay, that's what I
You're,
like to
you're,
hear.
you're the one who is running this show, and I'm just here to hopefully make you happy.
Okay, well, you made me happy just by being here.
Okay.
So let's start with this. So when we did the checking in with, which was a video that we did where we were looking at your artwork and you were uh, talking about the artwork, and there was a lot going on inside your head that was coming out on the canvas. Um, so I found that to be very interesting. Can you tell me like when that type of stuff happened with you in your head? Were you doing that, expressing what was going on inside of you as a kid? Were you an artsy kid?
Yes, I was. Um, my mother was very smart. I was the fourth child, and she was tired of having children. So she just left the screen door open. And I was lucky enough to have an orchard just down over the irrigation ditch that I went to. And um, I thought a lot. I kept thinking about things that were happening in the family and trying to make sense of them and observing the nature around me. And of course, getting into trouble as one does when one is little, and getting in and doing things that maybe nobody knew about
Mhm.
because I was sort of let loose,
Yep.
so to speak, on this little tiny farm. And what can I say? I don't know. I just grew to thinking about things and being rather an introvert. It's only in my dotage, my Chicago life that I've become more of an extrovert.
Yep.
So, does that
So
answer the
it
question?
does. It does. So you grew up. Was it Oklahoma that you grew up?
New Mexico, northern New Mexico.
Okay, New Mexico. And you grew up in a rural area. It sounds like a farm, and you were the youngest of four.
That's right.
Now, do you have is it older brothers or mix?
I had two older sisters and one older brother, and they're all gone.
Okay, and were they? I'm sorry. Were they much older than you?
Well, yes, they were. My sisters were much older, and my brother was 7 years older than I, and I was an accident. I was not planned, that's great. Um,
So you didn't have a neighborhood where there were lots of kids that you
no,
could interact with. So you were kind of on your own.
I had to walk at least a mile to visit my really good friend.
Okay.
So
So so it sounds like you're one of those people like me with a very active brain, and you were as a kid, which I was as well. My situation was a little different because well, I'm the youngest of five. I have all sisters, but I grew up with lots of neighbors, lots of kids. So I did have an active brain, but I was able to talk about all these crazy ideas. And, I think everyone thought I was a little bit of a wacky kid, but they liked me and they were used
I
to,
listened to you.
yeah, yeah,
That's really special. And somebody listened to you as a kid.
they did. So when did you discover art? And was that immediately something that connected to what was going on in your head? Can you tell me about?
Well, like I said, my mother raised chickens and she took care of a household and she did all that. And she liked to read. And the thing that was most important to her was making sure her youngest child was sort of out of the way.
Sure.
So she bought tempera paint and brushes and paper and let me go to my room or be in the living room with a bridge table and a glass of milk and a glass of water. And I painted from the very beginning. I can't remember when I haven't painted. I painted all kinds of things. And being the only one in my family that liked music, I listened to opera on Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah. And classical music. Nobody else listened to classical music. Matter of fact, my house was silent. It was a silent house. So I did a lot of my learning by listening to the radio. I heard a harpsichord, which was just like, wow, never heard such a thing in my life, you know. Of course, I also like country western songs too.
Ooh, okay. Now, what age was this when you got these paints?
I must have been 4.
Oh my goodness! Wow. So painting has been part of you for your whole life.
That's right. And it kept me out of trouble and out of the bars and off the streets. I don't know.
So this is kind of a weird question, but like, how would you describe your relationship to painting? Is it like a friend that you've had as a child? Like, how would you describe it?
Oh, it's everything. It's not only a friend, but it can be an enemy. It can fight me. I learned to talk to it. I learned to talk to my work. I always was a narrative painter. I had my book house books. I don't know if you know what they are, but they're like a series of books that have children's stories in them. And they have beautiful etchings. So as a child, I decided I would create a story using different pictures in the book. And so I would take a beautiful lady from one and draw her out, and then a horse from another. And I started by making these visual collages out of these etchings, these wonderful etchings in this series of books. And I could make scenarios out of plucking images from all these different stories and reconfiguring them into my own story. And that's how I learned to draw.
So it sounds like you had like a sense of confidence about what you were doing.
Well, I was fortunate. My second to the eldest sister was taking high school art classes.
Mm.
And she ended up being a very well-known embroiderer in Santa Fe. So she had to babysit me. So she would take me and her paints and my paints outside, and she would instruct me. So she was really my first teacher.
Yeah.
And I can remember, this is what is so really exciting. I remember that you can ruin things and that it's okay, because I remember sitting next to her and she did this wonderful, wonderful landscape of the trees and the house and blah, blah, blah. And it was just wonderful. And the next minute she screwed it up. And I saw her frustrated and upset. But then I saw her go back, pull out another piece of paper and go back. And I realized then that it's an ongoing process, that you're going to lose some and you're going to win some. And I was little when I realized that this is what it's about. It's not about finishing something and making, like pinning it on the refrigerator or something like that. It's a matter of process, that you're constantly winning and losing at this game. And so I think that sort of held me together, the idea that you can screw up
Yep.
and it's okay.
Yeah. And I think that is a lesson that applies to everything in life. So that's wonderful that you learned that as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly applies to art, but you don't want to quit just because something isn't working, or you can't feel like you're a failure because something isn't working. It's part of a process, and you got to stick with it, and you got to stay with it.
You feel the same way. It's a learning thing. Every time you do a podcast, you learn something. Every time you do a painting, you're learning something. Sometimes they don't work out. Sometimes they're tremendous successes. But really, when you start, you have no idea what's going to happen. And it's sort of an adventure.
It is. So you mentioned that your sister was your first teacher. When did you start getting like instruction in art? Because I'm very curious about this part of your story, having such a history and a lot, of producing all of this artwork and sketches before you even have like formal art training. When did you actually start getting, or did you ever get formal art training?
Well, we learn from many different sources. And an artist, a musician has their ears, right? An artist has their eyes. There was an artist a folk artist by the name of Barella. And my mother's cousin had a gallery in Taos. And we would go visit her aunt, the Aunt Maggie, and her cousin at the gallery. And in the gallery, they had all the famous Taos artists, okay, their paintings. Well, I knew them. I wasn't interested in seeing another adobe house.
Okay.
What I was interested in was the sculpture that Barella made, which was folk art. And in one corner of their gallery was what is called a card of death, which is created by Penitentes, which is a religious offshoot of Catholicism. And it's a sculpture of a skeleton in a cart with bow and arrow and mica in its eyes. So when you look at it, the mica flashes and there's this feeling that it's alive.
Okay.
And then on the floor of the gallery was this beautiful cottonwood sculpture of a snake that was winding around with its mouth open, ready to devour a cottonwood rabbit. And those things I can remember sitting there. I must have been 5, 6 years old, sitting there and realizing that that's really what I loved. I mean, the other paintings, they were wonderful. I understood color, I looked at color, but it was the emotion created by these pieces that I really gravitated to. And of course, they had a lot of santos. I mean, these are the things that inspired me.
Thank you for sharing all that. So you were activated, stimulated, and inspired. You were inspired to do what? You were inspired to create something. You were inspired to paint. You were inspired to tell me more about like what you were inspired to do.
Well, all I know is that I wanted to tell it wasn't until recently that I realized what my work was about. And um, my work is really about grief. And there's all kinds of grief. You know, there's grief of a death, there's grief of youth, there's grief, you know, there's all kinds of grief. And I realized that when I was looking at, reflecting back, I'm really realizing that, was I the snake or was I the rabbit? Was this a skeleton for me, or was I the skeleton? You know, I like that little twist, the little thing that makes people question.
Yeah.
The hidden things in work, the realization that maybe you don't know everything that's going on. I don't know everything that's going on. Trying to put that into work.
Yeah. So I think what I'm trying to figure out, so this is great answers. I think what I'm trying to figure out is, so it's one thing to be seeing other, people's work and seeing the snake and the rabbit and seeing yourself in there and trying to figure out where do I fit in, and getting all these ideas. But then it's something else to be in your studio or at home on the bridge table and creating stuff. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, when you were younger, how seeing all of that stuff, and if you don't have an answer, that's fine. What was happening that you wanted, that it was routing through you, and that you wanted to express it on paper, canvas?
I don't know. I wasn't good at anything else.
Mm-hmm. And you felt that you were good at this.
And I felt that I was good at this. I,
Nice.
I knew how to do this.
Yeah.
I can't do math. I'm a
Yep.
terrible speller. I wasn't good at school,
Uh-huh.
but I always was the better artist.
Yeah.
And I always had a different take on art.
So how did you know that you could do it well? Is it because people were telling you, or was it you were looking at it and you knew this is great?
I suppose it'd be both.
Both.
The grade school that I went to, the principal asked me to do a painting of the school. Well, I'm sure what he thought I would do would be a lovely little landscape painting with this lovely little old-fashioned school that looked like a castle. Well, I didn't. I think I disappointed the person. At that time, on Life magazine, or was it Post magazine? I'm not sure. What's his name? The commercial artist.
Rockwell?
Rockwell did a painting of children all over the place. And what I did was I took a close-up of this school and I painted children falling out of the windows and running around and doing wild and crazy things. And that was an oil painting too.
How old were you?
I must have been 8 or 9, something like that.
That's incredible. And what did the principal think?
They hung it at the school. I hear that the school has since burnt down and that the painting burnt up with it.
Oh.
But I don't think that that's the idea that the principal had. I'm sure that the principal wanted this lovely painting of the school.
So that's fascinating to me. So did you think that that's what he wanted, or did you not even, are you just like, obviously you can look back and realize that's what the principal would have expected. When you were 8 years old and it was requested, did you even think that, or did you just paint what you
I
thought of.
just painted what I wanted to paint. I guess nobody told me what to paint. I guess if they had said we want a nice little landscape with a tree and swings, I would have done that. But they just requested a painting. So I did the painting that I wanted to paint. And I don't know, I mean, it wasn't until later thinking about it, and I thought, oh my God, that poor principal. She didn't want my painting. She wanted a landscape painting. She wanted an architectural painting.
I think that's amazing. That's great. So I want to know about your thoughts or your relationship to like formal art training. I took a class at the Florence Academy of Art. Have you heard of that? In Florence, Italy. And it's like super rigid, in
Oh,
terms
yeah,
of,
like what's his name here in Chicago? Very rigid. You have to do plaster casts to
yeah,
start with.
exactly. All that. I thought it was great. But that is it's just interesting to think of that sort of formal, rigid training against like someone who started painting as a 4-year-old and had it as part of their being at such a young age.
The formal issues are very important in order to carry off your own thrust.
Right. So that was, and you mean things such as composition, value, hue, like all that type of
Right.
stuff.
All of
Oh,
that.
and
Right.
so you started to learn all that it sounds pretty young, as a teenager.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I understood that. I understood it. I mean, I don't know where it came from. Maybe it was genetic. I don't know. But I don't know where it came from. I understood it. To get better at it is
Yeah.
another trick.
I feel the same way. I feel that, particularly composition. I think it's maybe because I'm not sure, but composition is something that I've always been like, I got it immediately. And honestly, even when I learned about value, and saturation and hue, all that stuff made complete sense to me. Now, actually being able to control it with my paintbrush and my palette,
That's a different story.
another whole story.
Yeah,
And I think,
skill. That's skill.
and I think understanding it actually probably causes me more frustration because, I can see where I'm not fulfilling what I want. So in your email to me, you mentioned, I wish I had the exact words, but you used something, you you stated that like your artwork is kind of like you,
Yeah.
and that's how you feel? You feel like that is how you connect with the world?
Yes. 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 Particularly as I'm getting older. I mean, it's definitely, that's me. I mean, if we have an essence, that's the essence. That's it. I don't know. I mean, I had that discussion last night with Umberto about that I don't really care if museums have my paintings and if they survive and all of that. I don't care. I really don't. What I care about is the next idea that I have. And am I able to execute it?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I think all that fluff is really nice. I mean, I think that's really nice that you interview me and that I had a retrospective and all of that. That's very much of an honor. That's very nice. But that's not the reason that I work. That's not the reason why I do what I do. I have this feeling that we are all traveling.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us travel outward. They're outward travelers. They're out in the world. I'm an inward traveler. And I have traveled deeper and deeper into my inner thoughts over the years. And
Well, that makes sense to me. But what it makes me think is, what if you didn't have, because there's a lot of people that have a personality type like you, where they are very much inside themselves and there's a lot going on, and that's how they're traveling through the world, is in their head. We have the wonderful advantage that you have this outlet and you have this skill so that you can express all this stuff. There's people that have a similar, mindset as you, and they don't have a creative outlet. So they're just traveling through life and no one gets to know what's going on.
no, I mean, well, I teach people like that. I teach people, I've retired from teaching now. um, but I have taught people who wanted to be artists when they were 18, but their mother told them they should be an accountant. And so now at whatever, 62, when they retire, they decide they want to be artists again.
Yeah, and what happens?
I try to help them
Yeah.
be that artist again.
Is it
And
possible? Is it possible?
yes, it is possible. It's a long road, but it's possible. It's not whether you show, it's not whether you have a painting in somebody else's home. It's that expression, getting that feeling, getting your adventure, your images, your ideas out somewhere, and
Okay.
struggling with those issues. That makes you alive, I guess.
You're making me think about me and my artwork, and what am I doing? That's what you're making me think here.
Well,
Whether I'm focusing too much on whether or not people are interested in what I'm producing, as opposed
don't
to,
worry about people. Don't worry about others. It's always in the work. It's always in the work. And that's what I've always told my kids and my granddaughter. And it's always in the work. What people think, you have nothing to do with what they say. You cannot base your life on what they think, because believe me, most of the time they don't think. Okay? And they're not thinking on your level anyway, or on your wavelength anyway. Don't worry about what other people think. Improve what is your narrative? What
right.
are you trying to say? And let the chips fall where they may, because you can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
The only thing you can do about is making yourself a better artist and finding your narrative or your vision or your whatever. And my God, that's hard enough.
Yeah.
That is hard enough.
Do you
So
do you feel like there is something core about your artwork that has been consistent since you were a little girl, or has everything just completely changed over the years?
no, I think there's a bit of core. Like I say, I think that I am a narrative painter. I tell a story. I'm a storyteller. I come from a family of storytellers. I tell a narrative that's probably based more in grief, and trying to understand life and death kinds of things. Yeah, I think that's always been the core. Always. And nature and ecology. And I think that's always been the core. Always.
Okay. Okay.
One way or another.
Right. So what do you tell people that are listening to this, that maybe were artists as kids and they're now accountants, and now they're looking to be either an artist or more creative? What advice would you tell them?
Draw an apple. That's what I would tell them. Draw an apple. think about the apple in as many different ways as you can think about it. And I think that will start, oh, it could be a cucumber, or it could be a banana, or it could be an egg, but draw it in as many different ways as you can think to draw it. And I think that will begin to break your ice.
Okay.
It's very simple. Just take up a pencil and a piece of paper and draw an apple.
So you think people in society are kind of iced up?
What do you mean by iced up?
Well, you said it'll break the ice, meaning that people are
well,
stuck.
no, your own, it'll start the flow, your own creative flow. You have to break down your own barriers.
Right.
I mean, if you have always wanted to be an artist and you were told you couldn't be an artist and you were an accountant or you were whatever, whatever you were, a lawyer, and all of a sudden you said, okay, I really want to do what I wanted to do when I was 19 years old, then you have a lot of barriers there.
Sure.
You have a lot of things that are keeping you from doing this. You have a guilt. You have, you have lots of things that are just keeping you from
Of course.
achieving that. And so the thing to do is to say, okay, first step, I'm going to draw an apple.
Yeah, it's an easy thing to start with.
Right. And then I'm going to draw the apple like a cubist would draw the apple.
I tell people when you're having your coffee in the morning, rather than being on your phone or on your computer checking the news, have your coffee and draw a coffee mug every day.
Doesn't make it. And then if you get yourself a little a bunch of paint, I don't know. Like I said, I love gouache because it can be so tidy. And you get an art book, and then you look. Oh, gee whiz! Look at that. What if I did a painting like Matisse?
Mm-hmm.
How would I draw my coffee cup like Matisse? And all of a sudden, pointillism. What if I did my coffee cup or my apple like I was Seurat?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all of a sudden, you're starting to break down and you're starting to learn different things. And I would say by the 20th drawing, you would have a pretty good idea of what you were doing.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. And it's easy. That's where we all start.
Yeah.
So, okay.
That is a good answer. A good answer to my question. Well, Eleanor, thank you very much for chatting with me. This has been great.
Oh, you're such a darling. And this has been fun. And anytime you want to chat again, I'd love to chat with you.